Okay, by this time, Kenny and I were going pretty steady together, and the folks had met him one Sunday after church. Well, he picked me up, and he met the folks, and he met grandmas. But I had never met his folks, and this was probably, well, probably the last of September, and they were having a tractor show in Colby, and Kenny wanted me to go with him. So I thought, well, I've never skipped school, so one day won't hurt. So his folks and the uncle came, and we went to Colby, and of course his dad and the uncle sat in the front seat, and his mother and I in the back seat. Well, I did very little talking, but it went well. Well, that day it was cold and it was windy, so it must have been the first part of October. And when we got down there, why, Kenny and I took a fast look around at the machinery and so on, and we went in the building where they were fixing dinner and so on, that you could buy dinner, or they had some magazines and stuff in there. So we spent the most of the day in there. But his folks, they stayed and looked at all the machineries and the tractor pull and all this, and then we ate dinner and lunch, and then went back to school, and I sat down and wrote an excuse for school. But anyway, that was the first time that we had, like I say, that we'd met his folks. Uh, and we went steady all during, well, we'd gone, what, once or twice maybe in July, and then 3 or 4 times maybe in August. And then September, why, we were going steady, and he was talking about going into the Navy. And so when it got close to his 17th birthday, why, he decided for sure to go. So really we only went together just a little bit in all of September, and then most of October. But right after his 17th birthday, why, him and a friend did enlist in the Navy. But the day before, or the Sunday that he went out, why, he come over and got me, and we drove to St. Francis, and it was kind of like that he was wanting to really see things. He'd already put his car up on blocks so that it'd be there when he got home. And so we drove all around St. Francis, and then we drove out in the country, and we met his sister and brother-in-law, Hank and Vera, and they had 2 little girls, Kathy and Carolyn. And so I don't know if his folks in Jupe rode to town with us that night, or whether they came with Hank and Vera. But anyway, we all went down to the Colony Club, and we had a dinner. Well, earlier in the day, well, we talked about, how things might be and what they might do, and he gave me a ring, and to this day, I don't know. I think the only other person that saw that ring was Bob, because when we got to the cafe, Bob and 3 or 4 friends were there, and while we were eating dinner, why, Bob came over and said, well, congratulations. And then each one of his friends come over, and Kenny said, what are they saying? What do they want? And I said, I don't know. They're saying congratulations. And so anyway, we finished dinner, and Esther, who I'd already met in his family because she came over her senior year, and she graduated from Goodland, and then she roomed with a lady, Mother Morley we called her, and she had a little restaurant across by the dance place, and when we'd go over there, well, but anyway, I'd met her, and then his brother Ray, he had been to one of the dances that the folks had down in the basement. He came over, and he also dated a sister of one of the guys that Marguerite went with quite a while. So I knew who Ray was, but he was in the service, so he wasn't there. But the rest of the family was. And then, like I started to say, after dinner, Esther and I drove Kenny down to the train depot where he met his friends, and they got on the train and went to Denver, enlisted the next day, and were shipped straight up to Farragut, Idaho. Well, the school paper had what they called the gossip column, and this was just about kind of like who was going together and what so and so had done and so on. Well, when the paper came out, it said, "What's the sparkler on the left hand?" And I don't know just how they put it anyway. Or is it a gold band that Marie Days is wearing? Well, I wasn't wearing the ring because they gave it back to him and said no, because being a senior, I was going to be a lot of things. That there was a dance, and we didn't know where he was going or how long he'd be gone. And besides that, we were both just 17, and I can imagine what, even though Mother was married at 16, I can imagine what would have been at home. But anyway, the folks, of course, read it, and Dad said, "What's this?" And I said, "Well, it must be a misprint." He said, "Yeah, a misprint." But anyway, as far as the ring was concerned, Bob was the only one that ever saw it. I wore it that evening there, and if they saw it, they never said anything about it. But anyhow, like I say, he shipped to Boise or Farragut, and he didn't get home for Christmas. Well, this winter was a cold, cold winter, and it was in December sometime, I think, that Betty and I decided to go up to the dance because we didn't get home that weekend, and it was cold walking up there, but we dressed for it, and it wasn't Dad and Beverly and a girl named Gluster that was kind of a good friend of Beverly's and so on. We walked up to the dance and went in, and there was only about maybe 15 couple, about 30 people there, and it kind of seemed like it was paired off. They either went in at couples, or there was enough there to make off couples. Well, Martin Rogers come back into my life again, and at this time we were 17, and he was probably 18. And so when the dance was over that night, Beverly and Gluster, a couple of boys from Edson, took them home, and Henry Tagmeyer asked Betty, and so she was going with them. And Martin said, "Well," he said, "I'm snowed in town, and I'm staying with my aunt and uncle." So he said, "It's going to be cold, but we have to walk home." I said, "Okay." I said, "We walked up here." Well, when we went out, it had really turned cold. So the first block we had to walk, there was no protection at all. So it was cold, but then this dance place was clear across the north end of town, and we lived in the middle, so we had quite a few blocks to walk. And when we got down after these first 2 blocks, we were protected by the buildings, but it was cold. So we walked just pretty fast all the way down there. And when we got to the apartment, he came in a minute just to get warm because it was cold, because he had to walk clear to the east side of town. Now, I don't know whether he got a ride or whether he had to walk, but if he did, well, there was quite a few more blocks that he had to walk. Well, anyhow, Betty and what's her name, Henry, came home, and he said, we saw you walking and we thought about stopping and asking if you wanted to ride or pick you up. And I said, well, why didn't you do more than think? Because we about froze to death getting there. Well, anyhow, Martin had said, well, I'll borrow my uncle's car tomorrow and we'll come over and go to the show, which he did. And that was the last time. And we spent the evening talking about things we'd done since we were 13 and 14 years old. So it was kind of a reminiscent type remembering it. And he was married shortly after that. And the only other time that he ever come close to our lives was when Kenny was 14. He had a motorcycle. And he rode it into St. Francis. Of course, I know him. He was going too blame fast. And there was snow on the road and it was icy. And he went up this little knoll. And when he get to the top, why, he hit this ice, and there was a car parked in the middle of the street, and he crashed into it. Now, I don't know what it done to the car or to the motorcycle, but he got scraped up pretty bad, and he got a scar, a pretty good-sized scar on his arm, and he had that all his life. And when the first time I seen it or something had come up about that scar, and he said, yeah, he said, I went up there and my motorcycle crashed into a dumb car that was in the middle of the street. Well, come to find out that was Martin's car. And any time after that, why, if anybody asked him about that scar, he'd say, well, I hit her boyfriend's car, and this is what it left me with. Well, anyhow, then shortly after, it was probably, I don't know just when, sometime in January, well, he got home from boot camp, and he got snowed in. So he went down to the very same place that, the same Rogers place, or their name wasn't Rogers, but it was his aunt. And he and their son, Keith was his name, they had grown up together, they hunted together, and they rode their horses together. They didn't go to the same country school, but they did trap for prairie dogs and so on, and spent a lot of time together. So anyway, when Kenny got home from boot camp, why, he stayed with them because there was no way that he could get home. So I knew that he was going to be back before very long. But when I got home from school that day, why, he was there. And I don't think we ever locked the doors at the time because he was sitting in the kitchen. And he spent the evening there, and then the next day, why, we went to the show in the middle of, we went to this show. And Betty and Keith went along with us. And then I think the third day, why, he got to go home. But he did spend, and the weekends, and why, we were together. But, and after that, they shipped him out to Shoemaker, California. And that's where he done his, I don't know how long he was stationed there, but he had an appendicitis operation just shortly before his company was to ship out. And the surgeon told him that he wasn't healed yet, that he couldn't go. Well, he talked the doctor into letting him go. And he said, the doctor told him, well, if you can carry your sea bag on, why, you can go. So he said, I'd have carried that sea bag on if I'd had to pull it on or crawl on with it or something. But anyway, he shipped out with them. And that was the last time we seen him for 2 years.